You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. It's Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the Iron Lady sings the mix official. Welcome to 16 years and nearly 2,400 episodes of the Chris Voss Show. All the greatest minds that come and guest on the show and share their stories of life, adventure, things you can learn, and all this stuff to just make your life better, damn it. That's what the Chris Voss Show does. And if it doesn't make your life better, don't maybe stop this car and come back there and fix everything. Just go listen to all the shows one more time, if you will. Opinions expressed by guests on the podcast are solely their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host or the Chris Voss Show. Some guests of the show may be advertising on the podcast, but it is not an endorsement or review of any kind. Today we're going to be talking to a fine gentleman. He's a jack of all trades and knows a lot of stuff. We're getting into some of the deets of it. Aaron Novinger is a passionate advocate, devoted grandfather, and small business champion on a heartfelt mission for justice. Together with his wife, Rebecca, Aaron runs a thriving small business accounting firm with over 50 years of history, passionately supporting mom and pop business owners. Known affectionately as the guy who peddles for Ponzi victims, Aaron is preparing for an inspiring 2,000-mile bicycle journey from Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas, all the way to steps to the U.S. Capitol. And along his remarkable ride, he'll gather petition signatures, raise critical relief funds, and apply the voices of financial fraud victims nationwide. He's not just pedaling towards justice, he guides families towards secure retirements, cherishes his role as a proud grandfather, and tirelessly advocates on safeguarding themselves from financial harm. I need to hire him to write my bio. Tune in to follow Aaron's incredible journey and discover how you can help him make a meaningful difference, and that's what we're doing today. Welcome to the show, Aaron. How are you?
Chris, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on today. I know you're a super busy guy, so I appreciate you sneaking me in.
Yeah, we had to grab you off the street with the black van and a bunch of guys and jump you and put the hoodie over you. But,
as long as I can talk about the victims, you can do anything. You want to waterboard me? Fine with me.
Stuff. Usually, what's the line that we just did in the thing? You usually have to pay an OnlyFans model for that.
Right. You wrote it down. You even impressed yourself.
I like that joke so much. I wrote it down, and it's actually timely right now because if you think about it, Shannon Sharp's going through a little bit of that.
Oh, so he lost his contract yesterday with ESPN. Ooh.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. He's a good man. Great.
Technically, I think he resigned first before they kiboshed him.
So.
Yeah,
probably a good move on his part.
So there you go. Low until the beginning of the next season. Hopefully, they can kind of blow over and we can have our boy back.
Yeah, he can. I mean, he's a great podcaster. I think he's a funny and wonderful talent. I watched him play when I was a kid, or when I was. I'm trying to play it that I'm young. So, Aaron, let's get into it on you. Mm-hmm. Enough of the Shannon Sharp OnlyFans show. Give us your .coms. Where can people find you on the interwebs?
What we're doing here, this is all about raising awareness and fundraising for some amazing families affected by Ponzi schemes and financial crimes. PonziRelief.org is our big .org site to really kind of push the IRS Form 4684 that we're trying to save. And really, I try to put everything kind of in that one page specifically when it comes to this cross-country bike ride. So it's our second year to do it. Last year was crazy. You saw the bike from last year, and it was kind of crazy last year, but we pulled it off, man.
A Ponzi scheme is a fraudulent investment scam that operates by using money from new investors to pay off early investors. For those not familiar with it, or I think it's pretty much MLM in Utah. I'm just kidding, folks. Don't sue me. But seriously, stop it. Make it stop. No, and not all MLMs are Ponzi schemes for those out there that don't get my jokes or don't.
A lot of them are.
But I'm just going to leave that one right on the table, and I'm just going to not touch it because facts are facts.
You got it.
Tell us what this form is. Why is this form important, the IRS form that you're mentioning?
I tell you, it was actually pretty unique because the it was actually at the end of the year, because we do small business accounting. And so at the end of every year, we do our annual tax class. And it's me and a lot of our tax preparers, and we go away for a couple of days. And typically it's all of the new changes going into the next year and everything that's due to expire by the end of next year. And usually it's 2 books, a couple hundred pages, front and back of all of the changes. So you come back, and one of the things that they talked about a couple years ago that's expiring at the end of this year is Form 4684. What's unique about it, that's typically the form that you can actually document and write off theft. The form is really designed for theft, and I don't mean like I lost some money with my Microsoft shares, and that's different. That you can write off $3,000 a year. You've heard that before. I lost money in my investment. You can write off $3,000 a year, right? This ain't that. This is in 2019, 2020, the Tax Certainty and Disaster Relief Act. Okay, they modified Form 4684 to include federal disasters that you lost from as well for COVID.
Oh wow!
Right,
wow.
And the changes they made in 2019 due to expire at the end of 2025, but they added something back then that they'd never done before, and expires this year, and it snuck in, and it's about to sneak out. They added Section C of Form 4684. Okay, and C specifically is for being a victim of a financial crime, a Ponzi scheme. So, Chris, I'm going to give you an example. We did taxes, and as for us, it's ministry. So anybody that's been affected by this, we will do their personal tax return for free if they have Form 4684. I always say that the Form 4684, so think of the Ponzi scheme as a hurricane. But this, at the same time, both things can be true, that you suffer and you went through a devastating storm, the hurricane, but also there's also beautiful rainbows after the hurricane. This is a beautiful rainbow. So this doesn't fix the devastation, but I'll give an example of an individual we did taxes for. So he had lost between a couple of investments about $500,000. This form allows you under safe harbor provisions to write off 95% of that, of what you did. And it becomes on schedule on Section C, it's an income credit. And this client does a couple $100,000 a year in income. I mean, does well, right? But lost a substantial amount of retirement for the kids, right? But this year, we were able to capture about $450,000 of that on his taxes. And so before Form 4684, he'd paid in about $21,000 in taxes, still owed about $2,500 for the year. We did Form 4684, and he got an immediate $450,000 income credit. And he immediately wiped the $200,000 in income he had, which means the $21,000 he'd already paid in taxes, he got back in the form of a tax refund. The Treasury. And he still has a $250,000 tax income credit going into next year as a carryover.
Oh, wow.
So again, trust me, if you ask the individual, what would you rather have? A great tax refund or your money back? But there's no question. So the hurricane has happened, but this is a beautiful rainbow after the hurricane. And I am hoping 6 degrees from Kevin Bacon. You go to that ponzirelief.org and you'll see, sign the petition. I'm trying to get 50,000 signatures there, but underneath that is a letter to President Trump. I want my boy to see that, because all he has to do is just stroke the pen and we can make Form 4684 Section C permanent. It has helped so many people, help give a little bit of comfort to the devastation that's happened to them.
Ponzi schemes have been abound. There's all sorts of that sort of stuff running around. And it's crazy that, you would have issues with trying to write that off.
Well, you know what's one of the weirdest things, Chris, is that out of all the crimes, okay, and we know we've gone through the Me Too movement, we've gone through everything. This is, and I can't think of another crime that has more silent victims. I can't think of one, because you have to understand, and most of these individuals that get affected are retirees. Okay. So it's not like when they're playing chicken foot with their friends and it's, oh, you're not going to believe what happened. I lost $250,000 from a Ponzi. It never comes up. Okay. And here's the worst part, because the families are so affected, again, most of them retirees, they are so embarrassed and ashamed that they were a victim, like they had anything to do with it. I mean, Chris, I'm not kidding. Typically in a Ponzi, 1 to 3 people usually are all that knows about it. The owner and a couple close confidants, like the Madoff kids. That's why one of them committed suicide. You can't wear that weight unless you're a sociopath and not take your own life. Because when you know that you personally, out of your own greed, caused so much devastation. I'm not kidding, Chris. You can't see these victims before and after, and you see how much medication they have to take to function. They become walking zombies. And so I'm not kidding, Chris. The reason why this one, because we do retirement planning, done it for years. So I work closely with financial advisors. I don't deal with the investments. They do. I build an engineer, orchestrate the plan, architect the plan. They handle the investments. I've sat across the table from their clients for years. They're like family to me. And to watch what happens after this, and to watch just a complete meltdown of the family from it's like in the 1980s we had those those like little glass things. You put that little white disc in and it's red, and you click the thing and the pictures spin around, right? Yeah. And so it's them. It's their faces haunt me. And so I just kind of had this crazy idea. Look, let's do something stupid and see if we can raise a lot of awareness and, more importantly, fundraising for these families. And so this is my second year to do this charity bike ride. In the last 2 years, I'm sponsoring one particular Ponzi. So every year I do this, I sponsor a Ponzi to really shine the light on the families and the perpetrator, and just really bring awareness and hopefully, fingers crossed, healing to these families, because they deserve it and they're amazing. And so this year is for the Star Grower Ponzi. And you've got a gentleman. This is the best part, Chris. So these crooks, this is typically the way it goes. They always get sent to Club Fed. We get that. Okay. So they're always hanging out with, the pedos, the guys literally that, they walk around. There's no fence around this place. They go home for the holidays. I swear to you, they go home for the holidays. Wow. Okay. Wow. So this guy steals over $8 million from 40 families. He only goes to jail because they caught about $1.5 million of it that he went overseas to China and came back. So they nailed him for tax evasion, the Al Capone stuff. So they sentenced him to 5 years. And of course, because he's such a good man, this dude gets out 2 years early. Wow. And guess what? In his mind, I paid my due to society while he's living. Because they hide all that money, bro. While he's living on these retirees' money. And so for me, bro, this is, until we make them whole, I can't stop. Here's the thing. I can't sleep. It's a burden. So this is burden. This has nothing to do other than let's make these families whole. Let's bring awareness and attention to this cause, because nobody's talking about it. Yeah, definitely. It's there's people that, they shouldn't be punished for sometimes, being maybe a little uneducated or gullible. These people, they build trust. They're good at narcissism. They're good at tricking people. They're pretty professionals, and they're basically sociopaths. They are. And they're always completely removed from the client.
Yeah.
So the way this thing flows, and this is what nobody gets, you got somebody that orchestrates a scheme, and they make their company look great. They do all the documents they need to be by the book for the broker-dealer, and they get a contract with the broker-dealer. And then there's financial advisors, their whole career, relationships, great people who have a contract with the broker-dealer. Okay, the advisor knows nothing about it. They just have a contract with the broker-dealer, and this is a portfolio of options within the broker-dealer. And you have the client. Chris, the worst part is I saw it. One of the gentlemen this happened to, he almost committed suicide. It ruined him. Wow. And he's an advisor. Both of these guys, a couple of my good close friends affected by it, losing their career, their license, their name, their reputation. I'm talking guys at the top of their industry, as much victims. And guess what? The one guy that gets to steal it all, to him, it's just a dollar bill. He has no relationship with these people. He doesn't. Yeah. And so he just gets to sit, and then when he comes out, he's like, I've got all this money. I paid my dues, and now he sits on that money. And while they're still trying to figure out how they're supposed to tell their kids that their inheritance is gone.
Yeah. And I imagine it breaks up when it comes to suicide and depression. I imagine it breaks up families. You're embarrassed to your family that you let this happen. You're supposed to, take care of them. I can imagine that there's a lot of emotional fallout from this, and some people can't recover. I remember the Bernie Madoff people. There was a lot of movie stars, people that put their nest eggs in there, and I'm not trying to defend movie stars, but
there was also a lot of just normal mom and pop, just normal blue collar people. A lot of them, I would say probably the majority of them, because they invested in these funds, and these funds had a large money in there. So the same way, if you had blue collar, you invested some part of your retirement in a fund, that's what you did. So much of that money, yes, and I agree with you. I mean, I'm playing the world's smallest violin for those that can't see it because, oh, yeah, celebrity. Oh, same thing like with the California fires. Oh, I'm sorry that one of your 5 houses burned down. It's just difficult. Oh, thank you. Oh, you girls are not calling yourself astronauts for being in space, kind of floating for 4 minutes, and you literally call yourself a John Glenn. I don't, and nobody has any patience for that stuff. But these are just working class blue collar people. You get it,
Yeah. I mean, they're the ones that it's hard to replace that sort of wealth. I mean, especially if you're an older person, I studied to be a stockbroker.
Oh, wow.
And couldn't quite pass the test, but I was 20. I'll rack
They're
up,
not easy.
My brain was not fully formed and developed, but it was the trickery questions that got me. And we had a bad teaching school. But one of the things they teach you is, older folks that are headed towards retirement or close to retirement shouldn't be gambling heavy with their money. When you're 20 and 30, you can take some risky stocks on and different investments. But, when you're older, you don't have room to move. You lose everything.
Time is not your ally. So, you can't, that's the difficult thing. You can't get it back. Like that's what always drove me nuts about normal, I always call them friendly neighborhood advisors, because they're like, oh, if we just average 8% and the market's done that over the last 30 years, like, idiot. That's you putting 100% in the stock market. By the way, and that's also without you subtracting your baloney fees. So you're telling me that you're going to take a 70-year-old to get them the same 8% you're promising, 100% of in the market? No way. You would never do that. But because they make them sign these disclosures and these 5 pages of, 4-point font of, it's hypotheticals, past doesn't guarantee future, blah, blah, blah. I didn't guarantee you would get 8%, but you said it 1,000 times and you gave me illustrations for it. But I didn't, you should have read your stuff. It's just not right, man. And I really feel, with these individuals, somebody, man, I'm a big advocate for the voiceless. I've always been like that. And luckily for me, I've done enough psychopath events where I always tell everybody, because I was born half paralyzed, I wasn't supposed to make it. And my whole life, I've done impossible things. Like I swam my very first mile when I was 8 years old. And so
tell us about that, because that's a great story.
I was born severely deformed and severe chronic asthma. So I could not do any normal sport. If I literally just ran across the yard, it would be an instantaneous asthma attack. And it was so bad, I've almost died multiple times. I know exactly what it feels like before I'm minutes from dying. I know exactly what it feels like. It's actually very peaceful, to be honest with you. You just want to go to sleep. But then my parents got me into swimming. And for some reason, I could swim for hours, but it didn't affect my lungs. And my parents I have a very big heart for the military. All my parents, my mom, my natural dad, and my adopted dad were all air traffic controllers in the Navy. And we moved every few years. And so I actually grew up in Philadelphia. I didn't even know I was white until I moved to Texas. I'm being honest. Okay. And so as my parents, there was a naval air station up in Philly called NAS Willow Grove. Any of you old school Navy people will remember that. George Sr. closed most of those Navy bases down, but NAS Willow Grove is where I grew up, got on the swim team. And then at the end of this one particular, I think it's my second year of swimming, then, you always have to raise money for the American Heart Association. And, you get a pledge per lap. Okay. So this is in the 80s, like early 80s. Okay. So there's clearly no Google, right? And my dad, I said, I'm going to do this. And he goes, I said, oh, Pops, hey, how many laps is in a mile? And he goes, I don't know, but you've never swum more than 4 laps in your whole life. It's not going to happen. And I said, yeah, but just find out. So like the week goes by, and I said, Pops, how many laps in a mile? I don't know, son, but you've never swum more than 4 laps in your whole life. You can't do it. Yeah, I hear you, but find out. And next week, I said, Pops, he said, it's 52 laps. I said, okay, cool. I'm going to swim a mile. And so anytime I think about it, because there's a few times in my life that where you get so much approval from your dad, and so I remember start with all the kids, in the pool. And I got to lap 10, okay, out of 52, 10. And all of a sudden, kids started getting out of the pool. The best swimmers were in. And so I was like, okay, I'll just keep going. And by like lap 15, anytime swimming, when you do long swimming, they always give you lap counters and they drop them in the pool and they'll flip the cards over so you see where you're at. Because the thing about endurance events is you must, escape in your mind. You cannot be thinking about where you're doing. You have to go somewhere else. Okay. It's got to be your own choose your adventure in your mind, but you can't be thinking about the event. So you have to drop it in so you kind of know where you're at. And when I got to lap 20, there's nobody in the pool. And so I said, okay. And so I keep going. And then I remember like it was yesterday, because anytime you're swimming, okay, so when you swim, you can see sort of people here, but you're looking through water, so it's like fuzzy. And so I can see everybody walking, they're cheering me, and my dad's at the end of the pool, and so we keep swimming. I hit lap 40, 50, and then I hit 52, and he just grabs me, pulls me out, man. It was, I don't know, man. It was for me probably, I mean, obviously it's one of the most proud moments ever of my whole life. But that really was my beginning of realizing that I actually have a broken limit meter. I was born with deformed feet. I have a very bad foot disorder, and my feet bones walking is painful. And I decided 15 years ago, I was going to run a marathon. Yeah, but you can't. Yeah, but I'm going to. And I remember the very first day of training, your coach is, we're going to go 3 miles. It's going to be basically, you're just walking at a quick pace. You're going to be jogging so slow, you can have a full conversation with your neighbor. I couldn't. I was having a full asthma attack with that. And fast forward the week before, and it was the Big D Marathon here in Dallas. This is 15 years ago. The week before, I had horrific shin splints and bone spurs. And so the doctor, I had my legs scanned the week before because they were in so much pain from my training. The day of the event, I was like, that's no big deal. Pop a couple hydros, get those legs numb. We're going to run that event. So that's kind of the way I've always been, Chris. It's just one of those that you can't do it. Like what we're doing for small business. If we do it, what we're working on, we'll rewrite history and we'll save the mom and pop. If you can't tell, for me, it's either we save the world or we just don't do it. And so that's what this is. And the crazy thing is how this idea came about. Okay. This is a few years ago. And one of my close friends, RJ, this dude, we've been tight friends for 30 years. Matter of fact, his daughter and my son went to prom together and best friends. And so we were hanging out, and he does about every few years, he and thousands of motorcycle riders ride their motorcycles into Washington, D.C. for Memorial Day. It's a huge motorcycle rally. Okay.
Yeah, I've seen it.
And so every few years, they do this every year, but every few years he participates. And so he was telling me about it and about how usually they leave down like 4 or 5 days before, and then they'll like party all weekend, and then, they come back. And as he's talking, all of a sudden, and you have to understand, I get these like premonitions, and when I have them, I've had them my whole life. I bet 1,000%. When I have them, it's going to happen. And as he's talking, all of a sudden my spirit says, you're going to ride your bike from Dallas to DC. I'm like, literally. And as he's talking, I'm like, what the shit? I'm like, I can't, what does that even mean? You're like, what? And so the thing, I've had so many of these, I have learned I get the vision first, and I have to wait for the vision, like how it happens. That always comes later. Okay. Almost like that old Indiana Jones movie where it's the it's the step of faith where, you have to take that full step off the cliff and then the step appears. It's like that. And so I went in and I said, I don't even know what that even means. And I tell RJ, I said, I think I'm supposed to ride my bike to DC. What? Then, Chris, it happened just like this. It's not even 1% exaggeration. And this is the way it always happens with me. The next week, I'm on the phone with my executive coach, Lauren. And I'm like, Lauren, I'm going to throw a little monkey wrench in our plans. I think this is something I'm supposed to do. Ride my bike from Dallas to DC. I don't even know what that even means. And she said, and I swear, Chris, anytime somebody starts with, I know God's opening doors of provision. I know. And by the way, I was in ministry for 10 years and pastored for some of those 10 years. So I tell everybody, I'm the swearing pastor. So you will hear me swear a lot. I won't do it on the show. I only do that typically when I'm passionate. But I'm talking to Lauren, and I said, I think I've got this crazy idea to ride my bike from Dallas, DC. And she said, I have a good friend of mine, Tracy, that did something real similar a few years ago. She rode her bike from California to New York. And she did it to raise awareness and fundraising for diabetes. And she actually got on the Dr. Oz show. I can connect you guys if you want. I said, wow. I mean, Chris, you got to understand something. There's only half dozen people like on the planet have done anything like this. Okay. Yeah. And Warren, my coach, knows one of them. And then I say, hey, like, where's she at? She goes, she's like in the Fort Worth area. What? Okay. So she connects us, and the next week, she's my coach. And Chris, watch this.
Wow.
Watch this. Because I've done enough endurance events, okay? 120, 150-mile bike rides, because biking's my thing, because for my feet, it's way less painful on the legs, not necessarily on the torso. You know what I'm saying? And so I've done enough of these events that to train for a one-day 120, 150-mile bike ride it's about 5 months of training. Okay. This is 100 miles a day for 5 or 6 weeks.
Jesus, okay. That's a lot.
It's a lot. And I said, and so I talked to Tracy. I said, Tracy, I'm panicking. That's one of my big fears, is being unprepared. Like, it's a huge phobia of mine. And so I said, I'm so stressed about the training. And here's what she says to me. What training? I thought Ashton was about to pop out because I was being punked. I was like, what are you talking about? What training? Hello. The elephant in the room, the training.
Yeah.
And she goes, yeah. She goes, but you have to understand, this is not a race. Okay. And she said, let me ask you something. When you're 12 years old, how much training did you need when your parents locked you out of the house on Saturday? And how much training did you need to go ride your bike all day Saturday? I said, 0. She goes, that's what this is. This is just a Saturday morning bike ride.
Said, for 100 miles.
Wow. And that's what she was like, look, this is not a race. She said, when you get tired, you're done. And she said, but also don't forget, and by the way, all this is true. She goes, your bike is going to break. Mine broke 5 times last year, meaning it needed to be in a bike shop overnight 5 times last year. Also, she said, you're going to catch bad weather. And we did. Last year during the Oklahoma tornadoes, we were stuck in OKC for 3 days under a tornado warning. And she said, oh, and don't forget, this whole thing's for PR. So on the ride, you're going to have all these cities that want to interview you and all that stuff. And so she said, this is easy. If you did no stopping and you just went every day, about how long do you think it would take you? And I said, probably about 3 weeks. She goes, good. Double that. And I said, oh, okay. And 5.5 weeks later, we left because obviously we do accounting. And so we cannot leave before April 15th. Holla. So we left the Monday. Last year, we left the Monday after tax day, the 22nd, which happened to be Earth Day that year. It wasn't like we did it for Earth Day. And we pulled in to DC on Memorial Day. Yeah. And I tell you, Chris,
nailed it.
Yeah, but the worst part, we get to DC, and I'm like, I'm not kidding. One of the main things that's got me excited, that's keeping me going this whole time, is seeing tens of thousands of motorcyclists. 0. None of them were in DC. 0. That's because they left the day before. What I didn't know is all these guys come in on a Thursday or Friday, they party for a couple of days, and by Saturday, they're heading back home, because they got work next week. So I ended up missing all of the motorcyclists. This year, we actually toward the end of May. So we're going to completely bypass. We will not even be there close to Memorial Day, but I'm still pulling in the Capitol steps. Not until we get laws changed for these families, I won't stop. Unless I always say, unless I'm D or C, dead or in a coma. It's the only way this is not going to happen. I'm sort of crazy. I'm a little psychopath, but for good, all for good.
Aren't we all, though, sometimes when it really comes down to it? Let's talk about a couple things here. We've gone a little bit long. Let's get a plug-in for your other websites. I know you have a podcast and your website. Let's get a plug-in for your business. Tell people how they can onboard as we go out.
Absolutely. My wife and I, Rebecca and I's small business accounting firm, the website is amzn.to. Interstate Business Management. We've been Rebecca and I were actually able to buy the company years ago from last surviving owner. So we're going on 60 years of business. And honestly, it's so intentional to keep it separate because this is never, ever a plug for that. But I do want you, if you're listening or somebody that was affected by this, understand there's only a handful of companies, accounting firms out there that even know about this Form 4684 and how it benefits the individual. Anybody that's been affected by that, we will do their personal returns for free. So if you're listening, the only reason why we're plugging the accounting firm is only because you find your accountant, let them know about Form 4684, and if you're not comfortable, reach out to us. We will take care of you or your family or whoever it is. It's such a big deal. And remember, this expires the end of this year. We're trying to get this to President Trump where he can just stroke a pen and make it permanent because it's helping so many people. It's helping to it's just to kind of put a bow on this and be like, okay, it's not all horrible. And my goal is still fundraising and where we can actually make these people whole with that. But this is an amazing opportunity to recapture some of that through our amazing tax code that we have.
So tell people how they can reach out, how they can support your efforts, how they can onboard with you, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, ponzirelief.org. That's the big website. Please look, if you don't want to do anything, just go and give me 10 seconds and just sign that petition. Just sign it. Okay. So I want 50,000 signatures this year. I think if we can get 50,000 signatures, and then we can get somebody that knows somebody in the current administration that can just get somebody to see it. All we have to do is strike a pen, and we can keep this in place because it's helping way, way too many people, Chris.
Wow. Thank you very much for coming on. We really appreciate it. I mean, you've done such a wonderful job living your life. I love the story of how you grew up, the Phoenix from the ashes. A great story, and would make a great book, maybe story that you should put down if you get a chance.
I've been working on it. He says, I'm like, okay, to me, it's just my normal life. I'm like, okay, are you an idiot? That right there, that one. I have 50 of those in my life, so
yeah,
I appreciate you more than you know.
It'll be a thick book.
Yeah, trust me.
Thank you.
500 pages.
Well, I'll break it into 2 or 3. They don't read much.
We'll make it like a Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Yeah, make it a trilogy. And ongoing, it sounds so. It'll be fun to watch you as you go forward. So thank you very much, Aaron, for being on the show. We really appreciate it.
I appreciate you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks, audience, for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss. Chris Voss won the TikTok and Facebook.com/Chris Voss. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you guys next time. And that show us out. Aaron, great.